Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world watching this. Welcome to Caribbean Football Weekly on the Reggae Boys commentary. This is episode 7. I'm Nathan Carr from the home of Caribbean football, and I'm joined by Guyanese football expert and all-round Caribbean football aficionado, Santoki Nagilanjan. Hello, Santoki, how are you doing?
Yeah, I like the introduction, Nathan. I'm doing fine. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. Very well. It's a bit of a mouthful, but I'll get out in the end. So it was just me and Santoki for this episode. So the last couple, as you've noticed, listeners, it has just been myself and Santoki doing the discussion. Simon is still away on holiday. Not sure about you, Santoki. Seen a few holiday snaps. Looks like he's having a good time in Canada. I think he visited. Was it Niagara Falls?
Yeah, it was. I saw that. He has visited Niagara Falls. So, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely having a good time.
Yeah, very jealous. Although we are talking about Caribbean football, so who's the real winner? Right, we're gonna be talking about a few different things. Not a great deal. We've just been discussing off there. Not a great deal going on in Caribbean football at the moment, admittedly. We are going to talk about different bits and bobs. Starting off with a news roundup, which we usually do. Just recapping the latest news around the region. So, Santoki, do you want to kick us off with that? Is there anything to any pressing news to kick us off?
Yeah, well, a few international friendlies have been announced. So we have Dominican Republic will be playing Puerto Rico on the 28th of August. That's a Sunday. That'll be in Dominican Republic. Then there'll be a return leg 2 days later on the 30th of August in Puerto Rico. And then Puerto Rico jet off to play India on the 4th of September in Mumbai. So really impressive from Puerto Rico, arranging 3 international friendlies for the FIFA international window. Shows a real sense of commitment in developing towards their Caribbean Cup qualifiers, and it's a statement of intent. Not many teams have arranged friendlies for the August FIFA window, but Puerto Rico have excelled themselves by managing to get 3 fixtures, and it will obviously put the team in good stead ahead of the big games in October when they could make their debut appearance in the Gold Cup if all goes well.
Yeah, true. I think as well, what's good about the Dominican Republic Puerto Rico friendlies are the geographical proximity between both of them. You know, we've talked in the past on previous shows about transport and it can be expensive to arrange friendlies, but because they're so close to each other, I think that helps. Good for Puerto Rico, also good for the Dominican Republic, also preparing for the Caribbean Cup. I think in the past as well, there's been some criticism, hasn't there, targeted towards the Dominican Republic FA, criticising them about their lack of friendlies and the lack of preparation, but it seems like they're sorting that out.
Yeah, there has been some discontent from players and fans as to the lack of friendlies and sort of assertiveness from the FA, but they do seem to be putting effort into this Caribbean Cup campaign by arranging the friendlies, and it'll be great for both teams and also good for Caribbean football. Always good to see friendlies between Caribbean teams.
Yeah, definitely, and I think there'll obviously be a lot of fans as well. You would think turning out for those games, because I think it's a little bit of a rivalry, the Dominican with Puerto Rico. So hopefully there's decent attendances at those games. So in transfer news for you, there's been a few related to Caribbean footballers over the last few weeks. Hayden Holligan, the 19-year-old Bajan attacking midfielder, has signed for Sporting Cristina in the Finnish 4th tier. So it's a bit of you won't find many more quirky transfers than this one. The Bajan Hayden Holligan has signed for a club in the Finnish 4th division. But yeah, he has managed to get a professional contract, so that's really good for him. I think he's joined from Weymouth, Wales in the Bajan Premier League. Michael Hector has joined the Reggae Boy. Michael Hector has today signed for Eintracht Frankfurt, the Bundesliga side. I think they finished 16th, 17th in the Bundesliga last season. He's joined on a season-long loan. Now, just worry, Santoki. Obviously, he's joined Chelsea from Reading. But will this, because we see a lot of Chelsea players that aren't quite good enough to make the first team, they go out on loan. I think Chelsea got something like 23, 24 players out on loan at the moment. Will that stunt Michael Hector's career, his development, if he keeps being farmed out on loan left, right, and centre? Today he's obviously signed for Frankfurt.
Yeah, I think does seem to be a criticism of Chelsea. They do have a lot of players out on loan, particularly in Belgium, Germany, those around Europe. And the problem is, those players don't eventually make it back into the Chelsea first team. So it's essentially farming out players and then selling them off permanently. So for Michael Hector, it could be a problem because if he doesn't succeed at Frankfurt, where will he go after that? He had a good career at Reading, but obviously he feels he could make it in the Premier League. So it ultimately it's up to the player as to what he can achieve, but it does cause problems when Chelsea do tend to farm out a lot of players and not really have confidence enough in them to bring them back and put them into the first team.
Yeah, I mean that is you're right, but that is literally my only worry. I think he's a good player, and when I've seen him for Jamaica, he's been versatile. Obviously, he made his debut in the in last year's Copa. I don't think this will necessarily have a bad effect on his position in Jamaica with the national team, but I just think at Chelsea, he's not. I don't, without wanting to come across as too harsh, just don't think he's quite at that level. I don't think he's quite at that level yet. But yeah, hopefully that his career stays on track and he doesn't just go out on loan all the time to get games. I mean, in my opinion, maybe he should have stayed at Reading.
Yeah, I think in today's era of the Premier League, it's very hard for players to make the adjustment from Championship up to the Premier League. I mean, you do get occasionally the Jamie Vardys, but they're very rare occurrence. So I mean, it is hard to make that transition. So yeah, I'm not sure whether he can compete at the Premier League. If not, the Championship's still a good level, especially for Jamaica. They value players in the Championship. So yeah, we'll just have to wait and see what happens there.
Yeah, and talking of the lower leagues in England, Callum Geraldo Martin, the Antigua and Barbuda winger, has joined Oldham Athletic. He got released from Hull City recently, been on trial at a couple of clubs, one of which was Southend United, didn't quite make the grade, and now he's just joined Oldham Athletic on a permanent deal. I feel a little bit sorry for Gerardo Martin because I think he should have really been given more minutes at Hull, and he didn't get a very good treatment there, I don't think. And when I've seen him for Antigua Barbuda, he's looked good, lively, creative, very skillful. So what are your thoughts on that, on Gerardo Martin going to Oldham, and do you think there'll be any correlation between that move and his performances with the national team?
Well, I think firstly it's good to get a professional contract at a club such as Oldham as well, just to keep match fit and ready, and it will naturally benefit Antigua. Again, I do think there is a lot of clubs do tend to have players on their books when they're in the Championship, and then they just feel those players won't add anything to the team when they make it to the Premier League. It may be unfair, but it seems that's what Hull have done. But good luck to the player at Oldham. Hopefully, if he can excel, he may catch the eye of a team higher up in the Championship, or maybe a team lower down in the Premier League looking for an alternative option.
Yeah, hopefully. Well, he should get a call up for the Caribbean Cup games in October as well. He's I think he's one of the first names on the team sheet. We're going to go from Oldham Athletic to Real Madrid because Mariano Diaz, the Dominican Republic international, we're going to call him that. I mean, he's played for them in a friendly against Haiti back in 2013, but not since then. He's only got one appearance for them. But Real Madrid, Castilla player, been really good for them under Zinedine Zidane in pre-season. Mariano Diaz, and he's attracting interest from La Liga side, I think it's Leganes, and also Villarreal. So Villarreal, it's been reported online that they are going to take him possibly on loan or put in a bid for him. I haven't seen much of this kid, Mariano Diaz, but apparently he's very talented. And the Dominican Republic tried to get him for the recent Caribbean Cup games in June, but unfortunately he wasn't able to join up. But hopefully he can get some minutes in La Liga, and that'll help with his progress at Real Madrid.
I think that's a problem with that Caribbean teams face. They want players who are playing at the highest level, but there is a point when if a player doesn't make it into La Liga in this case or the Premier League, they don't want to risk flying out to the Caribbean because it may harm their domestic career. So it's essentially a tricky case for Caribbean clubs. They want their players to excel, but not to excel too well so that the player believes the Caribbean team is a hindrance. So it does present a dilemma to the countries.
That's often the case, isn't it? I think it's a big dilemma. I think if because it's a friendly, if Mariano Diaz was to go success at Real Madrid, and it is conceivable, then there's always, he was born in Spain. There's always that possibility he might go on to play for Spain. We'll see. But in other news, the CONCACAF Champions League match day 2 that returns tomorrow. Central FC against Sporting Kansas City are in action. They're playing Arabe Unido from Panama, and of course W Connection against Honduras Progreso. They're all 3 Caribbean clubs are in action. So Central tomorrow, and then we've got Don Bosco next Wednesday and W Connection next Thursday. So Toki, what are your general views and thoughts on the Caribbean clubs, how they've done so far? Obviously, it's very early doors, and each club's prospects for the next round of fixtures.
Yeah, I mean, you could say it was disappointing. All 3 teams lost quite comfortably in the first round of games, but then you could also say it's expected. It's a realistic result in terms of the development differences between Caribbean team and an MLS team or a Central American club. Central FC's game tomorrow should perform a bit better with Kenwyn Jones back in the lineup, so that should be a moral booster for the rest of the team, and also add some real quality up front, a real threat. He was a threat in the Premier League, threat in the Championship, so I believe at CONCACAF level he will be a threat as well up front, just providing an outlet and also a boost to the players to have a player of that caliber within their ranks. And Nathan, what are you looking forward to in this round of games?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to Cameron Jones potentially featuring, also Karen Cummings, who was shot in the leg back end of last year. So if those 2 start, they provide a significant boost to Central. Plan on home soil again. And I wonder if Sporting Kansas City as well will play their second string side, because Vancouver Whitecaps did that and Central came pretty close and acquitted themselves quite well. So we'll wait and see if another MLS club feel that a weakened side. Don Bosco, a semi-professional club as far as I'm aware. The underdogs in their group, and I can't really see them beating Arabe Unido, to be honest. Talking of them, actually, we're just discussing the Dominican Republic. I think their goalkeeper, Miguel Lloyd, is from the Dominican Republic, and he's in between the sticks for Arabe Unido. But W Connection, I suppose they did well to score twice against Pumas Unam. But it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough against these Central American teams, and that always seems to be for these Caribbean clubs in the CONCACAF Champions League, because history will tell you that Central American clubs generally have done better than Caribbean clubs in the CONCACAF Champions League, and we've seen Mexican sides dominate that competition over the last few years. So yeah, I mean, I suppose you could say that dynamic between Central America and the Caribbean is always interesting when observing these CONCACAF Champions League matches.
Yeah, I think there's a notable difference in the atmosphere as well. If you look at Central American games, it's like a cauldron. Fans are really volatile. It puts a lot of pressure on the away team. And I think the Caribbean doesn't have that advantage, you could say, in terms of home support. They do have a lot of fans sometimes for games, but you don't get a sense of it being like a hostile crowd or really putting pressure on the away team. And I think that benefits the Central American team, just putting a fear factor into away teams. I mean, MLS teams struggle in Central America as well. So it is that fan factor which benefits them.
The carnival atmosphere, I'm guessing, too friendly in the Caribbean. But that was the first half of the Central Vancouver Whitecaps game. And it was very sparsely populated. There weren't many people in attendance for that game. Now, I don't know whether it was the fact that it was an evening or the ticket price, whatever. But I know that Central actually did a fair bit of marketing and promotion for that. So it's slightly concerning that there was very, very few people. I don't know if this is because if we can attribute it to a lack of promotion, or people just don't fancy it, people don't know about it. I'm not too sure. But it's slightly concerning when you go to the MLS and it's packed out, and then some of these stadiums in the Caribbean, they don't get as many people. But yeah, we'll be following the progress of these Caribbean clubs, Central, W Connection, and Don Bosco. but yeah, remember there's 8 groups of 3 teams, and the top team from each group go through to the quarterfinals of the CONCACAF Champions League. I think that is about it for the latest news. We're going to talk about the CONCACAF Girls Under 15 Championship in just a minute. But is there any other news, whether that be from Guyana, Barbados, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, to mention, Sante? Because I think there was something regarding Russell Latapy that you wanted to mention.
Yeah, a bit of news from Trinidad coming from excellent journalist Lasana Lebert on his Wired 868 website. He's reported that Russell Latapy, an absolute legend in Trinidad, I mean, Dwight York's called him the greatest ever player to lace the boots for Trinidad. He is the front runner to be under 17 boys coach for their upcoming CONCACAF qualifiers in September. So that is a surprising move because Latapy obviously was the senior men's coach in 2009 to 2011. So it's surprising that he's gone for this job, which you could say is less glamorous, the under 17 boys. But I mean, if he does get the job, be a massive boost to the players to have a local hero in their ranks, coaching them, guiding them. And yeah, we'll just see how it goes. It will be an exciting move if it does happen.
Absolutely, yeah. He's got experience in Scotland as well, because obviously when he was a player, he was really big at, I think it was Hibernian and Falkirk. And he's got experience. I'm pretty sure he's the assistant coach at Inverness. Don't quote me on that, but and then they won the Scottish FA Cup, or I think Scottish Cup, something like that. So he's got a bit of experience. But when you mentioned that he was formerly the national team manager, I think he had a big fallout with Jack Warner. The two never really got on. And I remember reading in Dwight York's autobiography that in order for Latapy to come back and play at the 2006 World Cup and the qualifiers for that, there was a big phone call with Jack Warner, and they had to, go through like this reconciliation process to make sure that Russell Latapy could get back into the team during his playing days. But what a player he was. I still think he the little magician is Nick now. I still think he should have enjoyed a lot more success and recognition in his career than what he did. But I suppose it comes down to that maybe the lack of opportunity and the fact that he went under the radar a little bit. But yeah. So also just to round it off, the English football season or the British football season has just begun, as we know, last weekend. So we just want to say at Caribbean Football Weekly, wishing all the Caribbean players, whether they're Caribbean born, part of the diaspora, whatever, wishing them all the best in their new season for their respective clubs. So we're going to talk about the CONCACAF Girls Under 15 Championship. Started on the 9th of August, finishes on Sunday. 5 groups altogether. We mentioned it briefly last week, but not in a great amount of depth. But Santoki, have you been able to follow much of the tournament's progress? And if so, what are your thoughts on the tournament so far?
Yeah, well, with no streams, I have been keeping up to date with the score lines. And one that did stick out was one of the opening games in which USA did manage to run a tight game against Trinidad and win 22-0. So it did lead to a few fans questioning online whether that will be beneficial for the girls in a developmental way to lose so badly, or will that mentally scar them? Nathan, your opinion on that?
A bit of both. I think probably leaning towards mentally scarred rather than learning. But I think it's the emotion will be really raw after a 22-0 defeat. But then maybe after that time to reflect. I remember watching a video just before the tournament started from the TNT coach, and he was saying all the emphasis is on enjoyment, and it's not about results, and that's fair enough. But I think you can go overboard, and it shows there. Obviously, we didn't see the game, but there's obviously a huge gulf in class and quality between the two teams, which maybe at national team senior level wouldn't be so pronounced, but definitely at this level, it's demoralising for them.
I think the games are 70 minutes rather than 90 minutes, so that would be like a goal every 3 minutes, essentially.
Yeah, if I just get it up now, let's have a look. if it says the stats on when they actually scored, no, I can't get it. But yeah, you're right. I mean, if it's 70 minutes, it's going to be, you know, it is demoralising. It is demoralising. But it's interesting because Trinidad and Tobago finished third at last year's, 2014 under 15 championship. They finished third. So you know, it's a bit of a shame for them. But they were in a tough group. They were in a tough group with the USA, Haiti. And Trinidad and Tobago tonight they played and they lost, didn't they? They lost to Mexico.
Yeah, they lost 11-0 to Mexico. So another demoralising result for the team. I mean, I believe it's their worst ever tournament in terms of a team they've sent out to an international competition, because you'd have 33 goals conceded in 2 games.
Yeah, at least it can't get any worse, I suppose. That's the only positive, I guess. It can't get any worse.
Did they lose to Haiti as well?
I'm not too sure on the top of my head. I think they might have done if it's their worst aggregate.
I think they lost 5-0 to Haiti, but they had beat Haiti in the previous edition. So you could say the team hasn't. They've been getting worse, or this batch of goals haven't been sufficiently trained enough as the previous.
Yeah, perhaps lack of training sessions, that kind of thing. We don't know, but yeah, groups D and E are completed. So Curacao won Group D, Bermuda won Group E, and they finished yesterday. So the quarterfinals are nearly set now. We know that USA are playing Bermuda. We know that Canada are playing Curacao. We know that Puerto Rico are playing Mexico, who have tonight beaten Trinidad and Tobago 11-0 to book their place as the Group A runner-up. So they're playing Puerto Rico. And then we're just waiting on the Group B runner-up and the Group C runner-up to round off those quarterfinal matches. Now, we could have a decent Caribbean presence in the quarterfinals. St. Lucia tonight are playing Nicaragua. So hopefully St. Lucia can bag 3 points and book their place in the quarterfinal. And then also, hopefully, Jamaica can beat El Salvador. But Group B is interesting because Costa Rica, they play Venezuela tonight, who are already eliminated. So Venezuela are already eliminated and Costa Rica play them. So you would think Costa Rica would beat them reasonably comfortably. But then Jamaica is still going to play El Salvador. So I think really St. Lucia's chances are looking better at booking a place in the quarterfinals than Jamaica's, you could say, based on that situation. So Turkey.
Yeah, I would say St. Lucia have a better chance. It's hard to gauge the quality of teams without knowing too much about the players and their form. But you would say the Caribbean teams do face tricky ties in the quarterfinals. I mean, if the US result against Trinidad is anything to go by, Bermuda will be in for a tough game against USA. Also, Mexico against Puerto Rico. You can imagine generally Mexico would be a strong team as well. So it would be a success, I think, for the region if one Caribbean team did manage to make the semi-finals, although the odds do seem stacked against them at this point.
I just want to talk about the groups as well briefly, because I saw on Twitter somebody was complaining about the groups and the composition of teams in the groups, and they were saying, "Oh, Group A, it's got all the big teams, you know, Mexico, USA, Trinidad and Tobago, Haiti, and they're all clustered in this one group, and it's unfair." But I suppose you could make the argument that if all the best teams, doesn't matter what competition really, if all the best teams are in the same group, doesn't that give the lesser, inverted commas, lesser countries a better chance, like in Group D and Group E, of qualifying and getting out the group? Because you've got teams like Curacao and Bermuda that might have found it a lot more difficult against teams like the USA and Mexico if they're in the same group. You could make that argument. Yeah,
you could, but then I'm sure a fan of Trinidad would complain that they would rather be in a group such as ours and bag a place in the quarterfinals rather than you wouldn't want to choose to be losing 22-0 against the Americans, I guess.
True.
But yeah, I'm not sure how the groups were formulated, whether they had seedings or if it was just a random draw. It's hard to tell.
I mean, I think I imagine they were seeded. I mean, I remember the CFU press officer Troy Gibson. He told me that there's now they seed in a lot more of a democratic way, so to speak. And I think that's definitely at CFU level, whether that stretches to CONCACAF as well. But yeah, because there was a high concentration of supposedly bigger teams in one group, and then the other groups. I mean, Group D and E just had exclusively Caribbean countries. So yeah, that was slightly strange. But we've got the quarterfinals on Wednesday. On Friday, we've got the semi-finals, and on Sunday, when this tournament wraps up, we've got the final and the third place playoff. So Toki, looking at the quarterfinals, we know a few have already been confirmed. How do you see this going for the next few days? We've got the knockout games. How do you see it going? Have you got a prediction for a winner? And do you think it'll be a Caribbean country?
Well, I'd love it for it to be a Caribbean country, but I think this will go the way of generally CONCACAF tournaments with America, Mexico, and Canada being in the last four or somewhere close to that position. If I had to predict a team purely based on the fact they're a powerhouse in the region and they're also playing at home, you'd have to go with America being the favourites. If they're 22-0, anything to go by. So if I was a betting man, I'd put my money on America, but I'd love an upset. I'd love for Bermuda to get a win against America in the quarterfinals. But looking at the odds, I would say it's heavily stacked in USA's favour. Nathan?
Yeah,
prediction?
I tend to agree with that. I mean, my heart is saying Caribbean. Of course it is. But my head is really saying, without seeing, any of these games because of the lack of streaming, Central America or North America do tend to come out on top on these. But as we said, the results on everything. It's a developmental championship. We are looking more at the general progress and performances rather than the results. And I wonder how many of these girls playing at under 15 level will go on to represent the seniors in the future. I wonder how many will actually rise up through the age level. So under 17 will be next, under 20, under 23 for Olympic, and then the senior. I mean, that ultimately, how many progress and go through to represent the seniors, that is a reflection, isn't it, on the continuity process of that country.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long term. I mean, if you're looking at the success of a tournament such as this, you can't base it on the results this week. It's got to be a long-term development. How many of the girls make it to the senior team? I mean, if a core bunch of these girls from the Curacao team, for instance, made it to the senior Curacao ladies team, whereas only a few from America made it and America won this tournament, you'd say long-term Curacao gained the most from this tournament, so they would have real victors. So it will be interesting to see whether their transition is made at the senior level.
And it's worth saying as well, like, no Caribbean country has ever qualified for the Women's World Cup. So
Trinidad came close, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. I think they had 2-3 stabs at it, but yeah, couldn't quite get past Ecuador. So Ecuador got the place at Canada 2015, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed following the 2014 Women's Caribbean Cup, actually, and that served as the World Cup qualifying process. And I know there was a lot of money pumped into the Jamaican reggae girls with the Bob Marley Foundation getting on board, and Sadella Marley really helping out, not just financially, but emotionally as well, and giving real encouragement to the reggae girls. I think they raised a fair bit of money, but ultimately they just came short. They weren't able to qualify for the World Cup. But who knows, for the next Women's World Cup, so that'll be 2019. Yeah, 2019. Hopefully we can see a Caribbean country get into the Women's World Cup. That'll be really fantastic, because I do think that women's football is sometimes neglected, as we talked about in the Caribbean. I mean, the Reggae Girls program, it just stopped, cut dead in 2008, and it was only reignited by Sadella Marley. So, I think we talk about the men's teams not always getting enough exposure, but the women's teams really do go under the radar, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, the Reggae Girls were eliminated in CONCACAF qualifiers again by Guyana last year. The Guyana team as well, they made the Gold Cup in 2010 and they ceased to exist for 4 or 5 years. They called up the girls once again once there were CONCACAF qualifiers, but again, no plan to play any friendlies or any sort of signs of development. So it is quite sad to see the women's aspect of the game neglected in that way. I mean, a lot of federations are under pressure to put all their resources into the senior men's team. So you do tend to get youth and women's sides neglected often.
I mean, without getting too deep into this, I do feel as well that I know we've talked about women's football. I think it was on the second episode, but there's a very macho culture I think that permeates the Caribbean from the outside looking in, particularly in countries like Jamaica, very macho, very masculine, and there's this notion, this wrong notion, in my opinion, that a lot of women cannot play football when that isn't the case. And I don't think that atmosphere that's cultivated is necessarily conducive to women's football opportunities and then blossoming, getting contracts abroad and so on. I do think that macho culture doesn't help.
I mean, we do talk about the Caribbean being a few years behind European football. And if you look in England, there has tend to be a macho culture up until the 90s or early 2000s. I mean, I remember you had Ian Holloway, a manager in England, comparing a loss to like picking up a woman at a bar, and that kind of emphasis on macho culture. And even in England, up until recently, there was a neglect of women's football, whereas now you've got the Women's Football League and the English women done well at the World Cup. But it has been a long process, and when you consider the Caribbean, it does tend to be behind the times when it comes to football. It will be a long process in that regard to get rid of that macho culture. It'll be a long-term adjustment in attitudes.
I think it can be done, but it's just that cultural shift, isn't it, which we've talked about in the past. It's worth bringing in here as well, the CONCACAF Women's Football Leadership Group. Bit of a mouthful. The CONCACAF Women's Football Leadership Group, which have had a meeting recently, I think in Orlando, in the States, around this under-15 Girls Championship, and they're doing. I think there's people like Malika Church and Gwendolyn Selma from Antigua and Barbuda, Sonia BNME, who's on the FIFA and CONCACAF councils and president of the Turks and Caicos Islands FA. She chaired the meeting, and they're talking about how do we improve women's football in CONCACAF? How do we raise awareness? What initiatives do we want to bring in? They're already planning for CONCACAF Women's Day, which is a great initiative. So, I think that's positive. That is positive, and fair play to CONCACAF actually for getting that sorted. And I can only be beneficial because as we've said, women's football can sometimes unfairly go under the radar. So yes, we will. Of course, we said the final is on Sunday for the Under-15 Girls Championship. Hopefully, a Caribbean country is in that. If not, then so be it. You win some, you lose some, but we will hopefully try and bring you up to speed with the results on next week's show. Sorry that we can't, Miss, I can't bring you greater depth on that, but it is just so hard. I don't think there's any streaming. I certainly haven't seen any. So it's kind of just so far away going off score lines, but we are doing our best to, bring some kind of coverage. We mentioned Curacao. We mentioned Curacao in that little conversation, and we wanted to talk about their men's national team just to round off the show, because in the last few shows we've talked about Cuba, we've talked about the Dominican Republic, we've talked about St. Kitts and Nevis in a fair bit of detail on their recent rise. So we wanted to talk about Curacao, who will be participating, of course, in the Caribbean Cup qualifiers in October in the same group as Antigua and Barbuda and Puerto Rico. And really just looking at, you could call it a project really there since Patrick Kluivert's come in. I mean, obviously he's not the manager now, but it's a nice project, isn't it, with Curacao at the moment, with the players that they've got, the form that they're in. It's it's a decent country, if you like, to go in and take charge of.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about St. Kitts being a rising team in the Caribbean. They've had a steady climb. When you look at Curacao, it's like been a rapid rise in terms of their stature within the Caribbean. So this time, or March 2015, they started their World Cup qualifiers against Montserrat. Was very nervy. They qualified for a last-minute goal. But then since then, you've seen them develop and develop. They eliminated Cuba from the World Cup, and they've progressed really well in the Caribbean qualifiers. I mean, it is a project, but you have to say a large part of it is down to the influence of Patrick Kluivert, obviously world-renowned player, one of the greatest strikers of all time. He could have got a better job in Europe, but he's kindly come back to Curacao, land of his origins or his mother's origins, and he's really helped the team develop by his recruiting players from Holland and also boosting the local-based players or local players to raise their game. So really impressed with Curacao, and I wouldn't be surprised if they qualified for the Gold Cup based on their performances in the past 18 months. Nathan, what is your views on Curacao and their project?
Yeah, I'd echo pretty much all you said there. I mean, they only became, it's easy to forget, they only became a FIFA member in 2010 because, you know, up to that point, the Netherlands Antilles was in existence, and then Curacao, you know, replaced the Netherlands Antilles. And at the end, they have done really well. Kluivert's, you know, he has undoubtedly helped an awful lot. Just having a player, you know, just having a coach of his magnitude there, you know, he does a player recruitment. And I've noticed as well, I remember watching the game quite vividly against Barbados, the Caribbean Cup fixture against Barbados in March. Yeah, because they were in a group with Barbados and the Dominican Republic. And what Kluivert's did was introduce almost a different philosophy with Curacao. We talked recently about influences and, you know, on teams and the different styles and cultures, but they definitely have more emphasis now on keeping the ball. I've noticed that definitely on the Dutch way traditionally of keeping the ball. I think they had something like 70% possession against Barbados, but ultimately lost 1-0. Just lack of penetration. But now they've got the players with enough technical quality, like the Andrew Bakunas coming from Aston Villa. You know, to have a player with Premier League pedigree experience in your ranks at a Caribbean level is very, very impressive, especially when they come against teams like USVI, you know, in the last round, who are all pretty much amateur, semi-pro. So yeah, they've introduced that. And of course, they're in that group in October where any one of those countries, Antigua and Barbuda, Puerto Rico, Curacao, qualify, you know, they're into the Gold Cup for the first time. But yeah, Kluivert has left director of football now at PSG. Who do you I mean, apparently it's going to be a Dutch-speaking coach, or that's what the fans want, and it's going to be announced in the next week, so I've been told. Who do you think, or who would you want Curacao to bring in as Kluivert's successor? Presumably, Kluivert will be in an advisory capacity still, and he'll be helping out the new guy.
Yeah, I mean, we've mentioned it on previous shows, I believe, or maybe it's come across on Twitter, but Frank Rijkaard was a name we phoned into the hat. Aaron Winter as well was a name. So two national legends. But I think Rijkaard would be an improvement on Kluivert, if that was even possible, just because of the work he's done at Barcelona, the philosophy he's had, which stems back to what you said about the Dutch philosophy from Johan Cruyff. So he would implement a similar possession, ticky-tacky type of football within Curacao if he was to be manager. I think that would be an excellent recruitment. That stands out. But definitely, I do believe the coach needs to be Dutch speaking, just because in Caribbean football, you don't get a lot of time to get familiar with the players. You're kind of shot in there for a week or two, and you've got to get them ready. So if he does speak the same language as the players, that will obviously benefit everyone a lot more. So I do think a Dutch speaking coach does need to be picked. And the thing with Holland is because of Curaçao's connection to Holland, they do have a large pool of potential managers who they could call up. Especially someone like Rijkaard, though, would be an ideal candidate. Nathan, have you heard any more names to be linked with a job?
No, it was Rijkaard and Neeskens who helped his assistant, I think, at Barcelona and Galatasaray. He was linked. And then Winter, that was ages ago. I haven't actually heard anything new since then. Rijkaard, I think, is Surinamese origin, but again, it will cost a fair bit of money to get him in. But anyone high profile, of course, it helps with Kluivert being there. If he's gonna pull some strings for the FA, looking at a new manager, that's going to help tremendously. So we'll see on that front. As I say, hopefully in the next week or so. They're going to have to do it soon anyway, before October. They need a manager.
Yeah. But I mean, if anyone has some spare time on their hands, YouTube, there's highlights on YouTube of Curaçao's most recent game in the Caribbean Cup qualifiers against Guyana. Admittedly, it was an understrength Guyanese team, but it was a blistering performance on Curaçao. They held the ball well, attacked on the flanks. Bakuna stood out. I mean, you could really tell he's a Premier League player. And they eventually won 5-2 when there could have been more goals as well. So if anyone wants an example of the Curaçao way of playing, I'd advise you to YouTube the highlights of the game against Guyana.
Great shout. And also, you just reminded me, there is a nice little video feature also on YouTube of Curaçao and Kluivert and his last game there against the US Virgin Islands. So highlights from that game as well. Obviously, they're in the same group. I forgot now I'll tweet it out if anyone wants me to. I forgot the name of the YouTube channel, but it was a sort of 10 minute video, and it was looking at the project at Curaçao, and it spoke to Kluivert. It was all in English. It looked at the team bus, the players arriving, training. It was really, really good, actually. Really, really good. You got a nice bit of insight which you don't usually get to see. So I'll tweet that out if anyone's interested. So yeah.
Obviously, it's also good that whilst they're bringing in overseas players to the senior team at the youth level as well, they do seem to be excelling. So there is some sort of development going on with local based players or kids, and hopefully that will benefit senior players in years to come.
Yeah, definitely. Under 15s won the under 15 CFU under 15 championship last year, and then also they won the Guinness Street Football Championships. I noticed as well, Curacao, which is massive. Dwight York's an ambassador, I think. It's massive in the Caribbean, the street football, and Curacao won that. So, not only are the diaspora players from the Netherlands helping, because it is a constituent country of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, but also the domestic players as well seem to be flourishing. So we hope, we wish Curacao all the best, and we'll be following their progress in the Caribbean Cup. Only 2 months away now. Cannot wait. Me and Santoka have been saying off there, it is a little bit. It's kind of a filler show if you can look at it like that, because we are very much looking forward to the World Cup qualifiers next month, so not long now, and then the Caribbean Cup qualifiers as well in October. Should be really, really good, and we'll be trying to cover that as much as possible. It's worth just mentioning here as well before we let you go that in Turkey, I did tweet it out. I've decided to hop on Rabble Sports, Rabble TV. They're going to be doing co-commentary on St. Vincent and the Grenadines against the United States of America on the 2nd of September. The World Cup qualifying. So that's going to be on Rabble TV. So if anyone wants a fresh perspective, then you can get a stream up. There'll be plenty of streams for that with America involved, and you can listen to myself and Santoki ramble on about Tevin Slater and co. That'll be really, really good. We can't promise that I won't do an Unbelievable by Gary Neville. I can't promise that, I'm afraid, but that should be good. So a little cheeky plug there.
Without wanting to brag, I mean, if you do catch the stream and listen to other commentators, it will be heavily featuring the US team, whereas me and Nathan will be focusing on the St. Vincent and Grenadines players, giving you backstories. So any fans of Caribbean football, I'd advise you to tune into Rabble Sports and listen to me and Nathan ramble on about Caribbean football, which is our passion. Yeah,
we'll try and be professional, so to speak. It should be a laugh. It should be good. We're not, don't expect it to be, Jess Shreves and co. He's not a commentator, is he? But it's not gonna be brilliant. But we're gonna give it our best shot. So that pretty much rounds it up. Thank you everyone for watching again. It was about 10:30 here in England. So wherever you are in the world, thank you for watching. Much appreciated.
Also, can I just? Sorry. Nathan also, if you go to Nathan's blog, homeofcaribbeanfootball.com, he's written an excellent piece on the rise of St. Kitts and Nevis with some excellent interviews and features and a great summary of the nation's rise. So I'd advise anyone listening to the show, once you're done with this, log on straight away to the website. You won't regret it. Excellent piece.
Thank you, mate. Thank you. And I'll put the money in the post tomorrow. All right, cheers. No, thank you. Nice one. Just if you do want to check out that St. Kitts and Nevis piece, then should be go up. I'm just trying to think of anything else to plug. Santoki, where can we find you on Twitter and all the other stuff, all that good stuff?
So Twitter at SAN_TOKI_. So at Santoki. New magazine coming out in England, Interpress magazine. So interpress.co.uk. If you log on to there, you can buy their latest issue 2, where I've interviewed Guyana national captain Sam Cox about his career to date, coming from the Tottenham Hotspurs under 18s into non-league football, and about his journey into the Guyana national football team. So any UK fans, you can order the paper copy, and there will be an online copy in the future for overseas fans.
Yeah, it looks fantastic. I'm certainly going to check that out. I do implore anyone watching this to go and check that out. Really good work from Santoki and Sam Cox as well, the interviewee. Myself, obviously, website www.homeofcaribbeanfootball.com. I'm just thinking, I am on Snapchat now. Yep. So if you do want to add me on Snapchat, it's just the same username. So it's Caribbean Football Agreement to FTBL. I haven't been using it much recently, but my hope is to try and use that a little bit more, just like posting occasional updates and stuff of what I'm doing. So if you're interested in that, then feel free to add it. And also a real shameless plug here, but while we're on this subject, I've just recently did something for World Football Index, the World Football Index, which is a good football podcast, and they very kindly had me on to discuss Caribbean football, try and get it out there a little bit more. So I did a little cameo appearance on there. So if you do want to go and check that out, retweet it on my Twitter timeline. That'd be fantastic.
I'd highly recommend fans to listen to that, especially if you're not familiar with Caribbean football. It provides a great overview, and I think it's an hour. Is an hour in total.
Yeah,
so it's a good in-depth look at Caribbean football, which will bring you up to speed on the general going-ons in the region. So excellent recommendation there again.
Cheers, Santoki. Nice one. Right, so that is pretty much it. Simon should be back next week, so it'll be the three of us back to normal, so to speak. I think we're looking at doing a World Cup qualifying special pretty soon. Maybe not next week, but the week after. So look forward to that. Do remember to subscribe to Reggae Boys Commentary. I saw that Simon has surpassed 400 subscribers, so that's really good. Not just updates on Jamaican football, but generally on Caribbean football. So please feel free to share it as well. I've had generally really good positive feedback on the show. 7 episodes in. Do feel free to share it around. Tell your mates. Tell your neighbours. Get this thing going. Santoki, anything else to say before we conclude and say goodbye?
No, I think you pretty much covered it. I mean, if you're listening to the show and you know anyone who has the slightest interest in Caribbean football or just football that's not covered by the mainstream media, just link them to the show. I'm sure they'll find it enjoyable or interesting.
Definitely. Right. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week. Peace out.
Thanks, guys.